Kadutha. It is
I've
a
had a
pleasure.
crazy morning. It's cool. But I got here on time.
Mornings have kind of been like that. I've been discombobulated with the energies that are coming in, and it just seems like everything is running in lag time. So I totally comprehend that. So I'm glad you're here, and I'm really honored that you would join me today and that I actually get to meet you. It is a great honor and a privilege.
Thank you. I mean, to me, I'm like, whatever. But I don't mean it in a bad way. I know it was funny, but yeah, no, yeah, yeah. It's been interesting having. There's just so much happening lately. There's like a certain busyness to things. My website's being totally rebooted. I'm in a like taking an online film school, all this stuff happening all at once. And well,
Oh,
actually,
wow.
my wife and I are, we found out a few weeks ago that she's pregnant. But what we were doing is it's our child, but we consciously we're co-creating for our daughter to raise, Lucinda, who's 22, and her husband, and we're doing like a I have to bake a gender reveal cake today, so because she doesn't, our daughter
Oh,
doesn't know
wow.
yet what
I
we're
did
having.
watch the
But
video.
what's that?
Oh, I did watch the video when you were sharing that, and I was very, or maybe it wasn't a video. I think maybe it was a Facebook post now that I remember.
Yeah, I don't put much
And
on there. I don't.
no, but I
Yeah, I don't
did
put a
read
lot
it.
of. I don't spend a lot of energy on it. It's the same. It's exactly the same. So my voice started going out a couple of days ago. My brother-in-law's sick. My daughter is sick. I think my son is sick. But for me, it just usually takes my voice. Doesn't really do much to me. But I know the one thing I need. But yeah, it's like I don't have commenting on my YouTube videos. There
I
was actually
noticed.
Muji that suggested that to me like 10 years ago. He's like, just lock your commenting. I'm like, that makes sense because I would spend hours trying to calibrate something from all these experts. And when I say experts, I put it in quotes. Somebody would read a book, so they'd become an expert. And then I would spend hours writing a real proper response from lots of different angles. And then they'd write something stupid. And I'm like, well, then, so I figure it's my turf in that sense. Let them post it somewhere else and do whatever they want to, say whatever they want, but at least allow it to be a pure sine wave in that sense that's unaltered. And I have zero interest in popularity or I used to. I thought more people was a better thing, and it's not that it's not, but now I'm so focused in on going as deeply as I can with each individual that yeah,
The one-on-one. I totally comprehend that.
yeah.
And our YouTube channel is the comments are on, and the hours I spent and spend in responding to all of those comments. If people knew how much time and energy has gone in to share these beautiful messages. I work doing this, volunteering at about 70 to 80 hours a week. It's like literally two full-time jobs.
Yeah.
And it's been my joy, but sometimes people don't realize all the behind scene things that are going on. And when they want the direct one-on-one and they're wanting you to stop in the midst of your stream when you have 50 to 100 that are doing the exact same thing. It's like, I want to spend one-on-one time with you, but I need to be smart about it. I need to have
Yeah.
some wisdom instead of just like scattering the seeds, like blowing when daff or you take a look at what is the word, what I'm looking at, the plants in the yards. Date, no, the ones with the yellow. Why am I
Yeah,
even
why
at
is it daffodils? No,
no, the ones
no.
that are considered weeds but are actually really healthy for you when they seed.
I know, and I eat
Dandelions,
them.
thank you. My husband just
Yeah,
helped save me.
dandelions. Yeah, me
So
too.
dandelions,
Yeah,
when
we
they
got the
seed,
greens.
right? It's like you take the seeds and then all of a sudden you
Isn't that
blow them
funny?
and they
We
just,
both spaced out on that. That's
I
happening to me
know.
lately, though. Certain things that have been there my whole life, it's like all of a sudden they're not there, and people are like, "How do I hold all that info in my head?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't hold it." I'm like, if it's about Aramaic or spirituality, whatever, it's my passion, so it stays. But if it's like about auto mechanics, forget it. I mean, I wouldn't remember anything. But
Those just kind of blow away.
yeah. And
I
that's
totally
the dandelion effect. But yeah.
I like that. We just coined something new, the dandelion effect. I love that. I'm
Yeah.
writing that
Oh,
down. I want to use that one. That's good. Dandelion effect. Maybe that's a real thing that we're tapping into, but I
it
don't
could
know.
be. I
It's
mean, there's a butterfly effect. So
yes, there is. Yes, there is.
yeah, it's interesting because when things are rooted with the dandelion, of course, it's a completely different. It's not a different organism. It has such a different appearance when all the when everything's being fed and it's connected to its source. And then there's just a certain point where what matters is going to stay, which actually is nothing. It ends up leaving an emptiness, but yet everything that had been fertilized gets sent out into the world. And yeah, that is kind of cool. But anyway.
Oh, I like the analogy. That's good. It's really good. In fact, that's one of the things that I truly appreciate the way about you presenting, because you give us these beautiful word pictures and explaining some of these Aramaic concepts, which are very difficult to come across in English vernacular to bring across. It's like I've had discussions with my friend Linda on that, and it's like, some of these words, just English words, you can't, they don't translate across. So much is left undiscovered
Yeah.
through the minimization that comes through English. And I didn't realize that until we started studying. I mean, my husband and I don't know if you know much of our journey in our YouTube channel, and it matters not to me whether you do or not. We started this journey only 10 years ago. So you have, you have like 20 more years under your belt than we do, but we started it 10 years ago, and we started with Hebrew. And there was a calling. It was definitely Ruka was calling us. There's
Hmm.
no doubt about that. It fully was a direct call. And when we started studying, we of course we embraced the Hebrew because the Hebrew is more widely accepted as
Hmm.
far as um, just
I
being
really
able
did
to
as well.
have.
With me, it was Greek and Hebrew that I dug into originally, just because Aramaic is pushed off on the side. Shh, we don't talk about that.
I
So,
know, right? It's the
literally.
most transformative
Yeah.
form. No
Yeah.
wonder why it gets shoved off like, don't look over here. Oh, embrace Greek,
Yeah.
right? But I'm grateful that we went in through the Hebrew first because it was such a foundational piece. And my husband and I, we began to see that especially in crossing over to Aramaic. I've only been in Aramaic for about a year and a half, somewhere in there. Time just keeps blending. But we could see the feminine and the masculine aspects very strongly. And
Hmm.
I was so elated when I saw it because I realized this grand marriage. What really pulled me into wanting to dive deep is I'm studying Hebrew, and then I learned about the ancient Hebrew wedding, the sacred wedding, and all of the symbolism was in it, and I dove hardcore deep into that. And of course, I'm connecting English scriptures because I still didn't have enough information within me to connect it to a lot of the Hebrew words, let alone the Aramaic words. And so all of that was a platform within my heart. It was something that was I had such strong passion for, and it would bring me to tears. And then I started my inward journey. And then all of a sudden it made total, complete 100%
Hmm.
sense. And so then in embracing the Aramaic with that feminine energy that is there, that is waiting to be discovered, that helps us in our darkness, especially with shadow work.
Hmm.
Phenomenal, phenomenal tool. I could see the two of them of how they did this. I can see how they were
Yeah.
separated and that feminine was pushed aside as a heavy masculine structure. We got to build, we got to conquer, we got to form, right?
Yeah.
And I saw that and I was like, there's that missing piece. And as soon as I started tapping into Aramaic, as again, it's like a brand new language that I'm now, it's like, man, I've spent all this time in the Hebrew and now I'm getting into Aramaic and I'm like, oh my God, they're one and the same. They are merged. They,
Sisters. Yeah.
they, it's
But
like
they
the
flow
Hebrew
in
was, they were
through each
pulled
other.
apart, but what I'm seeing now is the merging of the two. I'm seeing these beautiful Hebrew words that are enveloped within the Aramaic, and I
Hmm.
see this beautiful cosmic dance that went from 2D. This is something that just happened recently. It went from 2D to like this 3D spiraling, and I began to see words within words, and then I saw flanking words like wings that were encompassing the heart, and I was like, what is going on here? And I realized that it's a dimensional shift that the languages provide. If you
Yeah.
spend enough time in it, your perspective changes. And then all of a sudden, my husband calls it the compass journey, and being able to see through the 360 degrees of all these different aspects, that then once you begin to see that way, everything changes.
Yes.
Everything, everything. And it's sometimes very difficult to connect with those that haven't been on the journey. And as much as the heart desires to, we reach out, we do what we can, and it's like, well, it will come. It will come. It's not my job to worry about who's doing what, why, when, and where. It's not my job to save the world. I dumped that a long time ago. It's just my heart to share that which is on my heart. And that's what you do. So I honor your work. I honor your work and what you're
Thank you.
presenting.
Yeah. It's funny. I was in heal the world mode for a while, away from my family on the road for years. And then it was like right before my Echoes of an Ancient Dream came out. I was getting all these big offers, and I kind of looked around and I talked to friends that had self-published, and then I just was like, look, I can have this. It was almost like, Yeshua being pulled up to the pinnacle of the temple by Akil Kartza, and like said, look, you can have all this if you just, basically prostrate yourself before me, give in to the world, the mamuna, etc. And I didn't. I actually stopped, pulled off the road, canceled tons of events, and came home and started focusing more on not necessarily online content immediately, but working with people one on one. And when I did that, that was a huge shift, and I was able to go really deep. It's funny because I was in Dallas at Unity of Dallas speaking to 500 people when all of it started. I was showing photos of my now 10-year-old having just been born a few weeks earlier. And that's when it started, things started downloading like, Dale, you have to wind this down. And I'm like, this is like, look at what's happening. Why would I want to wind it down? And then it took about 4 years before officially I just kind of let it unravel. And then, yeah. So now if I do an event, I just do whatever I want. I don't have to be out there. I'd have to give places 18-month lead time on what I was going to talk about. I'm like, I don't even know who I'm going to
Oh
be in 18 months,
my goodness.
Yeah.
There's so much conscious shift that can happen from day to day. Like
Yeah. So, yeah,
presenting
the big
yesterday's
places
manna.
want it
Wow.
all in writing and specifically, and people would be amazed. Most of the big churches don't promote events. They expect the people, the grassroots speakers that come through to do all that kind of stuff. And it's a lot of the spiritual churches are some of the most disjointed places, bless their hearts, that I've ever been in. It's kind of funny how it works out, but yeah, and they
Well,
get very political and,
I
but
that's just a condition, right? That is a
yeah,
total
I was gonna say,
condition of humanity.
have you dug into Stanley Tenon's work?
Honestly, I'm going to tell you what happened. As soon as I started diving into the languages, all of my external searching literally stopped. There was a few things that made their way across my table, and it was very divinely orchestrated. Ruka is like, you need to read this, or you need to read this, or
Hmm.
listen to that. But it was a very narrow time, because as soon as I started getting drawn into the languages, especially with Aramaic, I started realizing that there was so much food, there was so much sustenance there, that I didn't want to go anywhere, because
Yeah,
I started seeing them as love letters written to me,
well, that's
about
awesome. I
me.
understand what you're saying very much so.
So
Um,
no, no, I haven't.
yeah, I was just I'll send you some things after the call. I mean, his book, we waited for this book for like decades, and he
Oh
finally did get it
wow.
out. Alphabet That Changed the World.
Is that Aramaic?
No, it's Hebrew.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
fine.
but he was the first person. He's a visual pattern recognizer, the first person to find codes, as you would say, and not codes in the sense that the New Agers push them, like repetitive patterns, etc., in Genesis and Bereshit. And it's amazing what he's done. I first was turned on to his stuff in the summer of 1995 via
Well,
VHS tapes. And it totally changed the entire trajectory of how I approached everything at that point. Um, and I had already been pretty deep into all this really since I was 7 years old. I started with playing around with Greek Bibles and stuff, which is an odd thing,
No, I remember your story and telling that,
but
and how you were comparing all these translations, and like, if this is the word of God, then why are they so different?
yeah, and then I'd be like, "What does the word of God mean?" Well, you take it on faith. What does faith mean? You got to faith develops in time through faith. I'm like, "What?" In other words, shut up, kid. Stop asking
I know.
questions.
It's
Yeah,
like
it was pretty amazing.
that inquisitive nature that we have, and we go to try to seek answers from those who should have the answers, and then they just leave us with more questions, and then you scratch your head, and then you realize you're like, you have really no idea either. Oh
Yeah,
wow, why am I
that's
here?
basically it. And we don't have an idea about a lot of it's like if you really boil things down, you get down to the realization that number one, nobody was following Jesus around with a dictaphone with a recorder. He probably
Right.
nobody was even writing it down
No,
possibly until decades later. Just
exactly.
right that right there, it's like it takes the intensity off some of the details, but the one thing I'm really here for is to keep people from hopefully throwing the baby out with the bathwater. They'll hear that and they'll turn into little wah wah babies and throw the whole thing out. And I'm like, wait a second here. Almost all of our spiritual philosophies that go back for thousands of years, we don't know who wrote them. We don't know where they came from. The Tao Te Ching, people say it was written by Lao Tzu. Well, Lao Tzu means old man or old sage in Chinese. So it's like, hello, we don't know. It could have been multiple people, but it doesn't take the profound nature of the experiential evolution of ourselves digging into
Yeah,
it. And when it takes over the heart, mind, soul, not takes
exactly.
over per se, but there's something to it,
Unifies.
obviously. So, yeah.
Unifies the whole vessel. I mean, it's definitely something profound. And this is, I'm glad that you brought that forward, because these are some of those foundational shaking pieces that must come forward. And when you begin to see the wisdom that has been penned to us, like when I began to see code, not necessarily like what you were sharing, the gentleman that you
Hmm.
were talking about before, but when I saw the purpose of letters being added and deleted that
Hmm.
didn't transfer into English, and I began to see the letters and each word, the letters having a meaning, and all of a sudden this one little definition that was, like this, all of a sudden went, oh my God, there is so much information here that has
Yeah.
been left off the plate. What are we doing? And then I realized,
Yeah, it goes like whoop, like that. And then how do you
yes, I love
translate
that
that into
visual.
another language? So,
You can't. Not when English forces it into one word to one word. And then what messes with the mind is when you're digging in and you see the duality in it. It's like, well,
yeah.
wait a minute. How can this word mean this or that? That they're like opposing. It's like, oh, I get it now. It's for us to see the duality that's within us.
And
And all of a sudden
there's
that,
always a common
ah,
thread. It's
yes,
the key is finding the place where they come together.
that
Yeah.
narrow path between the two that unite as one, and that balance, and it's so incredibly beautiful. But these, some of these translators, I used to get really mad, and I don't know if you went through this phase, but I was angry for a while. I would look at these translations and I would see the beauty and the depth and the riches of the glory that was in there, that was just stirring in me and moving my heart and moving in me in tears. And then I looked at this really static, totally neutered word in English, and I would get so angry that I began projecting, outwardly, these doggone stupid translators. I mean, and it was bad. And I remember at one point throwing my Bible across the room, going, this is bullshit. I don't want to have anything to do with this anymore, because it was radically shifting all of my foundational pieces. And then I went, wait a minute, humanity wasn't ready yet. So you may want to blast those translators and say they did it manipulatively. Did they do or not? I don't know. I wasn't there. Not that
Yeah.
I consciously remember. So how can I say that they manipulated it on purpose when consciously we were not ready for this information? We truly were not. And I
It couldn't
believe
have even
that's,
been translated, I
oh
think, in a
no.
lot of cases. And one of the primary issues for me is I realize that if the translator, interpreter hasn't had some sense of the experience that's being communicated,
Right.
they can't translate it. It's just not
It's not
possible.
possible, right?
So,
It's
yeah,
it's that divine experiential knowledge, really that path of the mystic that opens up and then you see and then you feel. It's not from here. And I know that I'm preaching the choir when I say this because you have done such a beautiful job representing what is going on in here that it's the sensory feeling of what is being presented. It's not the logic aspect of it, because that's really the Greco-Roman mindset that we all were raised in. It's like, okay, approach it from the head. And it's like, if you approach it from the head, you are never going to see the beauty and you're never going to see yourself.
it's a trap.
Yes, it is.
It's funny. That's what, the people talk about the love of money. Money, the love of money is the root of all evil. But the word money that's used there, that's kespa. And what kespa means is actually the belief in the illusion of a rate of exchange. What does that mean? That means that somehow I can give you something that once I give it to you, now you have a sense that you're more than you were before I gave it to you, or I can
Uh-huh.
take something from you, including self worth, things like that, which I can't really take. It has to be given, but
Right.
that I can take something from you that now you feel that you're somehow authentically less than you were. And that's the whole illusion. And then when you start waking up and realizing that you're watching the Leela, the Maya, the divine play, and that you're a character in that, everything shifts. And it's funny because when I put videos out about that, remember we're in a movie theater here. This
I
is
love
not
that.
totally real. And I get literally hate messages from people. How can you say this isn't real, blah, blah? And it's like, well, I felt that way 30 years ago too. But when you actually wake up in the theater all of a sudden, and it does not remove accountability. It does not remove I feel, personal purpose of relieving the suffering of others in the movie, etc. It all goes hand in hand. But it's funny, you just can't tell someone who doesn't see it. There's nothing you can say.
No.
And 99% of the people that are the Karens, the trolls, maybe 100%, they just don't see. So I
No.
mean, like, it was either, I think it was maybe Alec Martin on it might have been Brandon, I can't remember, on Facebook, who posted some sort of quote that I had said about, I can't remember what it was, and it was great because this guy replied something to the effect of, well, this guy definitely pulled that out of his butt crack, you know. And I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant, talking about me. And I saw it, and I was like, and I wanted to actually engage. I wanted to engage because to me, I thought it was awesome. I'm like, anybody that can come up with that, I want to talk to. Um, but then I'm like, I was like, Dale, you're still biting the hook. You're
I
still
know,
about to
right?
bite the hook. But I messaged, whoever's wall it was on, and I'm like, I was like, I have to admit, that's a really good comment there, the butt crack one. And there's some other funny, because there was one of them that there was some lady who someone would post something and this woman would post, nah, Aramaic didn't exist in this time period and blah
I
blah blah.
know.
But everything she said was wrong. Everything we absolutely know for facts. I don't know if she made it up and she just needed some kind of opposition or something, but everything this woman said was, and some of it I even made sure to go and check and look into, and I'm like, well, this is all, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, maybe, without mentioning any, recent political figures, like maybe she has a pseudo world in her head and it really doesn't matter what's in front of you. Maybe they just create that pseudo world and they just need the conflict to feel that they're sort of being seen or something. And I was fascinated by it because this lady was making such just basic errors. It would be like saying that, Washington, D.C. is located in Washington State. It was stuff that was I'm sorry, just almost stupid, in that sense. And it's hard for me not to get entertained by that. And there is a part of me that wants to engage. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't mean anything. The engagement doesn't mean anything. What means something is that I'm able to express authentically.
Yes.
The thought that I'm somehow going to shift a person's awareness over to what I think or believe in a Facebook comment is just absolute stupidity. But that doesn't mean, don't communicate, etc. But
I
I just find
grasp
that
that.
whole thing fascinating. So I actually love some of the. I mean, I've had death threats. It's been a while since I've had an actual death threat. A clown that posed as an actor named Adrian Brody. He's Jewish. He played. I think it was he Greg Brady in the Brady Bunch movies, like the remakes. But and it's funny because this guy from Virginia was like creating all these different persona accounts to try to like comment on my channel. This is going back, 10 years ago. And he created all these different personas to basically argue with himself and with me and to challenge me. And then this other guy, this Appleseed clown, who did the same thing. He had multiple channels and he would go on and like attack other people from multiple accounts, looking like it was a pack of wolves and it was one person. And then what I started realizing, and this is 10 years ago, I'm like, you know what, Dale, would you do that? Would you create multiple profiles to attack someone? No. Would I, even I've never even given a thumbs down on a video in my life. Would I put a
Me
negative
either.
comment on anything someone created?
Mm-mm,
No, I wouldn't. So
mm-mm.
in the end, I actually take it as a compliment. It's like it doesn't matter what they think, because if they would do all of these things, what that proves unequivocally 100% is that whatever they do believe is not right. It's off. It's wrong. Because if it was correct, what they're trying to shove down my throat, they wouldn't be able to do this stuff. So the fact that they do it, and then I started taking it like a compliment,
Mm-hmm,
like good. And then I would start making comments like, I'm so happy and glad that I rattled your precious cage. And of course, that
mm-hmm,
would drive them mad. But that's not my point. My point is just, we people that are awake would never do that. So obviously,
mm-hmm.
whatever they believed was wrong anyway. So
Well,
I
and
get like
that's
questions like, what God do I serve? All these other weird
right.
ones. Like it's a multiple choice. It's like, can you give me a multiple choice so I can
I
actually
know.
check off the box? Or
I know.
just really
The
infantile stuff.
egoic mind can't handle it. I mean, that's the thing is that when you're stuck in the egoic mind, so let's go back to that Greco-Roman mindset. We learn these foundational pieces. We're indoctrinated, we go to programming school and they become our foundation. And the ego cannot handle it when those foundational things are shifted. And so its knee-jerk reaction is automatically defense. I had to step back a little bit and I just don't engage anymore because myself, my husband and I had shared something that we had discovered regarding Hillel, the name Hillel,
Hmm.
and who and what the vibrational frequency of Hallel is and what it was translated into. And then we saw Lila, we saw Hallel, we saw Lila, we saw this beautiful dance, like, oh my gosh, so amazing. And we wanted to bring it to the forefront. And if you, oh my gosh, the backlash was so
Yeah.
bad. It was so vicious. And I realized I was like, these paradigms that are being shifted right now because we are in a massive transition, that ego has to have that knee-jerk reaction. And whenever I see somebody respond in that, I'm like, oh, I love you, you're in fear. And I totally comprehend that because I spent most of my life there. Everything was that. And it was the knee-jerk reaction, especially when I traveled into the Hebrew roots movement for a while, because I had to see the system of duality between Christianity and Hebrew roots, Messianic is I
Hmm.
had to see this comparison so that I can neutralize it within me so that it no longer warred. And I'm really glad that I did because this new wave of Ruka that is flowing through us is something that is so beautiful, and it's really rattling both sides. Is it so those who have not found that center place right here, that haven't been able to neutralize the very own war that they have, they automatically have the knee jerk reaction. And when they knee jerk like that, my heart just like opens so wide for them. And I don't have that defensive posture anymore. It's like the fight. This is strange because it's going to sound strange, but the fight has been taken out of me for something greater. The fight
Yeah.
has turned into love. And love is, and it doesn't need to defend itself. It just is in this beautiful place of being. And so when I get this pushback, my heart just flings wide because I remember where I used to be in especially when I was in the Hebrew Roots movement. Oh my gosh, if you were not keeping Torah, you were going to hell, you were going to
Yeah.
burn, the Creator was going to come after you. And that was some of the darkest periods of my entire life, was when I entertained those thoughts and that separation and that division. And then you get into Aramaic and you're like, the Aleph is added everywhere. The letter Aleph is literally added everywhere. And if you cannot see this, you are truly blind, and your ego is now master over you. You haven't learned to master it. It is master over you because you choose not to see it this place, because it's everywhere. And I had some really, and I'm sure you experienced this, and I want to hear more from you, because the people on my channel hear from me enough as it is. But when I began looking at some of those words, like when I would see the word satana or say it, and I don't even know how to pronounce some of these things. By the way, my greatest wish is to be able to speak Aramaic. I study it, I read it, I know it, I feel it. I can't speak a lick of it. I sound my way through things. So that is my greatest desire that I'm putting out there, that I will learn how to be able to speak it so beautifully like you do and others that have gone before you that I've heard. Anyway, when I began seeing some of these concepts, I had to really change my theology. I mean, it was a radical, radical shift. I'm like, wait a minute, why does the word Satan have an Aleph added to it? What is going on? Why is that there? And I began seeing other things, and my ego at that point was thrashing, and I didn't know what to do. Sometimes I would just have to simply walk away and then go back into my heart and say, okay, Ruka, you got to help me with this, because I don't even know what to do with this. My ego. And I didn't even have words for that. It was like, I'm freaking out right now. Everything that I thought is totally just dismantling before me, and I don't know what to do. Man, it was brutal. But I'm so grateful, because now I can see it, because it made me healed and whole. And I'm very excited about the series that you're beginning to talk about, or that you're going to be doing, with the
Yeah,
loss
I've
of
kind of
YouTube.
peppered a couple out there, but I haven't. Yeah, I've consciously stayed away from the too much of like apocalyptic revelation, etc. But then I started thinking lately, I'm like, if people are really tangled in that net, it's probably something I should address.
Yes. In
So,
fact, collectively, just to let you know, this frequency is definitely going out for those who have connected at this level, because Brandon and I just started a recent series that is despookifying, turning fear into love, because there are so many of these buzzwords that are misunderstood. And we want to be able to help relieve the fear of some of these programs that we've adopted as being that which we have to endure, or who we are, or keeping us in a lesser vibratory nature of an expanded consciousness, because we're under something instead of rising above it and realizing, no, we're not there anymore, and we are choosing to challenge these. And we started last week. That was our first one. This Friday will be our second one. And what I'm finding, to help encourage you, not that you need my encouragement at all, but I am excited that you are willing to tackle these things, because many hands make light work. And the way you present, which is so beautiful, because I feel your heart in it, is a different fractal of the same diamond, the same gem, but just a different angle of the light shining through, in sharing through experiential knowledge. Whereas where I come from, I do a lot of the letter breakdown, and I go into depth in, so that the people who are really interested in that, they are coming my way. But I
mhm.
want people to see your fractal. I want them to see the light that is shining through your gemstone of who you are in the heart of your being, because you will take these beautiful concepts through the words and just speak them. You don't take the time to dissect and do all the letter stuff.
Well,
And I'm like,
I did used to, and it's peppered in there here and there, but yeah, I lately it's becoming more streamlined, and it's almost like the more I know, the less I know that I don't know, and also I don't know about the older I get. It's not because of age, but the longer I'm in this, the funny thing is the less I say blatantly, the more I leave between the lines, I guess you could say.
yeah.
And I mean, I had I called it my mid 50s, early Billy Graham period, where I was like nothing like Billy Graham, but I was just pissed at the world.
I
Um,
get it.
yeah, and I had to work myself through that. It took me about a decade and a half, like to get to the point where it was like, all right, Dale, now that you're past being so pissed off that we got lied to in so many different directions at
Yeah.
once, now maybe we can get some work done. And it was like, okay. Um, so, and I've noticed now that for me, and it's funny, it comes more from my Buddhist roots, which started in my teen years after having been raised Christian. That in those roots, I noticed that silence is always more powerful than words, and I realized that we aren't afraid of silence because it's nothing, but rather because it embodies everything,
That's
and
so
that
beautiful,
terrifies
truly.
people.
Hmm.
And it's like if someone puts like some sort of, like, someone will send a stupid email through my website, um and if it's really dumb, it's like, why even respond if I even see it? And I think that, a lot of times silence or even Facebook, it sucks, but I can't open some of my messages on there because as soon as I'm on the hook, I'm stuck. And then it's like this tennis ball going back and forth, etc. Which, you were talking about all the comments on your channel and everything. It's like I totally and completely get that. And I spent so much time on it. And I wouldn't call it time wasted, but it was not, efficient. But in certain stages, I think it's all part of the growth, and it's all part of what we need to do. And some people, that's where I think they'll thrive in a lot of senses. Me, I'm so, you also meant, like, when I mentioned, Stan, it's like you mentioned, like, not, I have the exact same comment. I am not get defensive, but it's like people will ask me, have you heard of blah, blah, blah? And I'm like, I don't know what anybody else is doing. I'm sorry, except for a few, people that I really watch who aren't necessarily in the Aramaic field. Rocco Errico, I spend an hour or two on the phone with him every week, but it's like he's not out there cranking out lots of stuff right now. The people I watch are like Joseph Marshall III, who's Lakota, and those are the ones, but most, or Thich Nhat Hanh, anything he ever releases, although I don't think he'll release anything new again, but anything he puts out, I get. But people mention all these like hot books and all this other stuff. I'm like, it's fine. I don't know. I don't know what people are doing. And it's, maybe there's an aspect of tunnel vision. I don't feel that though. I feel that it's just a really strong focus on what I'm here for. And I mean, I don't necessarily need to go out and add, but that being said, people give me books a lot, and I can open up to one page and it can set me on a totally different course for weeks just from one quote or something. So I'm 100% open. I'm just also very focused on not trying to hold too many things at once, so to
Sure.
speak. So,
Well, that's part of the chaos that has been much of our life and much of our programming is carrying and having too many irons in the fire. And really, one focus can take a whole lifetime that is targeted for the maturation that we need. And, you know, there's just so much within the languages that they continually to point to go within. And what I'm finding for me and my personal study in the morning, because I began branching out and helping tutor people, which has been just the it's like my favorite passion. I'm like, oh,
me
you're
too.
interested in the language,
Yeah,
oh my gosh, let's spend time with each other, right? It's like you send me a message that says I'm interested in tutoring or I'm interested in learning, and my heart just goes,
yeah,
oh, you have no idea how beautiful this journey is. But I'm finding in my own personal study time, I don't have to, all the answers are right here. They're right here. And so when I engage in the language, and I always rub my heart when I talk about it because I can just feel it. I just feel me, the essence of here. That when I begin engaging in the language, it's the revealing of me that has always been, but I forgot.
yeah.
And it's this beautiful love story. It's like I get so emotional when I talk about it because it's like this love story that beckons you to come back in these love letters every day. And for an individual such as myself, starting later in life, I'm going on 49, being later in life, I
God,
look
you're
back.
you're 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 way old. God, I am 49, so I'm about to turn 50 in a few months. I'm just kidding.
Well, what I'm
I
saying
am,
is
but
for my journey in starting this later in life, like if this had been, perhaps if this had been a foundational piece, 30 years ago for me, maybe I would have disregarded it or taken it as more common than I am now. But I look at the challenge, and it's not a challenge in a bad sense. I'm thinking, I want to go through every single verse. I want to just put on and in these verses so that my embodiment of who I am in this avatar is nothing but Meltha coming straight through Oretta. That is my heart's desire, so that when people see me, they don't see Carrie the avatar. Yes, they see me, they see my face, they recognize, they know my name. That's fine. My ego, I could care less. If you know my name, oh, that's Carrie Husband. So, so here's Dale Allen Hoffman. We're just avatars. We're just following the passion of our heart. But if they can see Meltha and they can experience it, if they can connect to Oretta, that
and
is my
what a difference between what lives through you, what is you, as opposed to the way most of the world functions, which is trying to live within frames or trying to live up
right,
to some kind of law, a
right,
mimosa that we're somehow
exactly.
trying to apply, we're somehow trying to stay on the path of. People ask me a lot about the commandments, and I'm like, well, which version? If you're talking about the Ten Commandments, that's one of three versions, but but it's like, I'm like, those are there for the idiots. And that doesn't mean that, it's the people that aren't plugged in, that don't
Right,
have life living consciously through
right,
them. We got to give them some parameters, like, don't
right.
murder other people, don't do it, things be. And that's what's amazing to me, as you wake up, the more that innate guidance system, the GPS, lives through you, and all those parameters and all of that doesn't mean anything. And then when you see, a lot of times, one of the things I've learned over the years is, the more I see, not necessarily the less I say, but the less I need to say. So I guess that's a good way of putting that. But it's funny. It's one of my mentors, taught me to essentially walk into a room in my early 20s. He's like, he would just walk a bunch of us into a room, and we'd go, okay. And then we'd walk back out a minute later, and he'd be like, how many doors? How many windows? What was the color of the floor? What? And it's like, you didn't tell us to. And he was like, no, I didn't need to tell you. He was like, now we're going to go back in again. And he's like, I want you to watch. And he was like, is there any reflective surfaces? Why does a reflective surface matter? Because like, as an example, if I'm taking groceries out of my car, I'm aware, and there's zero fear in this. It's just, I'm aware, I see reflections, I'm paying attention to who's walking around me, behind me, but I don't say anything. And if I go into someone's home, I'm not necessarily looking for dirt in the corners or anything, but I'm conscious. I'm very aware, but it's not something to yak about, and it's not a nosiness. It's about a perception. And the more you pay attention, the less I find that I need to say anything.
Sure.
Because 9 out of 10 times when I feel a need to say something, it usually is somehow misinformed on some level. And it's now,
Yeah.
if I'm asked a question, that's
Right,
different. But
right.
it's funny, like, if we meet people or go out to dinner, especially if it's people we just met, my wife Loretta, she's just amazing. She kind of watches me from the side, because people will want to drill me about what I do, and they have a
Mhm,
thousand questions, especially if
mhm.
they've, like, been like a follower of my work for a while. And she'll watch me, like, knowing that I agreed to do this dinner, breakfast thing, whatever, knowing that I was going to get drilled. And that's part of it's just part of, not drilled in a bad way, just a thousand questions, but I
Right.
love it. So she watches me in the beginning trying to, like, shovel food into my mouth and not say anything, and basically resist until eventually my door starts to open. And then it's like, she knows once I start, it's like, it doesn't stop. It's like an avalanche in a good way.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Well,
avalanche is the best way to
it's
put
what
it, but
happens when we get connected right here. New frequencies, new people, new surroundings. It makes us very aware of our human side, catching our human. And I noticed that for me, in just what you said. I love the aspect of having awareness of your surroundings, because in that awareness, much is speaking to you all the time. It's like my friend Linda talks about how the world is a prophet to you if you would just sit back and
Oh,
take
what a
in
beautiful
as
statement.
awareness, right? It is the prophet to you. It is the mirror to you. So stop and be aware, and then listen to that which you speak. Hear the words that are coming out. Catch your human to be able to see what is going on. And because of that, it allowed for me to do a lot more healing here and realizing just how uncomfortable my egoic self was in situations. In fact, right before I went to Crestone, where we met up with a bunch of people from the United States. Well, I wouldn't say a bunch of people. It was like 20 came in the time. But for me, that was a lot because it's just been my husband and I for like a decade, just us, literally just
Hmm.
us. And so having 20 people decide to come from different parts of the United States,
That's awesome. I think that's
I was
awesome.
like, oh my gosh, I got people from the East Coast and the West Coast, and we're coming together as family. And Christina Fuller is one of them. You know her very well.
Hmm.
You're coaching her. I love her and her husband to pieces. And so we decided to gather. And
She's totally wide open right now. Her Jonathan's probably like, "What the hell's going on?"
oh,
Because she's just like,
oh my God, we love them so much. We love
yeah,
them so much. There was so much heart opening when we joined together and we began bringing more and more. And they were hearing from a different source the same thing that you're saying, but just a different fractal. And
yeah,
there were
yeah,
things that Spirit did that opened up hearts. I mean, I have such a longing and a pining in my heart to be together again with family. There's times I just get overwhelmed because there was this heart connection that most of our vessels are longing for. So what I ended up doing before we went is I became very transparent, because transparency is something that Ruka has really been gentle with me, at the same time hammering me with. You
yeah.
know how that works. It's like, okay, there's a hammer, but it's coming as a feather. But my ego is like, oh my God, stop beating on me, right? And the Ruka's like, it's just a feather. Get over yourself. But I realize that one of the things that I end up doing when I'm uncomfortable, when I catch my human, my egoic side, is that when I meet people for the first time, I knee jerk into humor. I want to try to make people laugh. And I realized, and this was hard, this was really hard for me to accept, was that I was realizing that it wasn't about them. I was uncomfortable with myself in a new group of people because of some of the woundings that were there. It was like the fear of rejection. And so my knee jerk reaction, I love that phrase, knee jerk, boom, is to try to make people laugh, to disarm them. And I wasn't really fully aware of this. I remember people had shared this with me years ago, and they would say this to me, and I just didn't get it. And they go, "Oh my God, you're one of the funniest people I've ever met." And they would say this to me, and I would hear it, and I'd go within, and I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm like one of the most serious people on the planet. What are you talking about?" And I realized it was me being uncomfortable in my own skin. It was my uncomfortableness with my very own self when I'm amongst people that I don't know. And then I realized it was because I truly didn't know myself that this knee-jerk reaction happened. And so I'm finding that the more that I journey within the language, more that I allow these letters to come in of light and love that massage my heart, the more that it's the revealing of me. I mean, I'm literally going through my own apocalypse. And it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And so now when I enter into a room, I don't have to have that knee-jerk reaction. I don't have to try to be the first one to create and, make a joke about something just so we all feel together, because it was really me. I was wanting to feel comfortable. Oh, they think I'm funny. They're not going to reject me, because I kept rejecting myself. It's like, oh my gosh, and for me, when I look at and teachers, Aramaic wisdom teachers as yourself, and I love that. I think it's just so beautiful because there is so much wisdom. The gift is when we continue to point people inwardly, because it's not about us, it's not about you, and it's not about me. It's about we. It's about we. And there's no amount of words that you can say. There's no amount of Hebrew or Aramaic letters that we can present that is going to be the treasure that is discovered when one finds himself right here as one with source creator, as Abba, and experiencing Oreta for the first time. It's like there's no words are necessary. And so, again, speaking to you, I appreciate what you have done for humanity. And although I can see where numbers are limited, and I get shocked when I see, like, I would expect when I first went to your channel and I'm like, why doesn't he have like 100,000 subscribers?
People say that a lot. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Because it's so, but again, the ego has a hard time with these concepts, because what you present and why I wanted to have you on and why I want people to go see your information is because what I see is you. I see your heart. I feel it. And for people who haven't tapped this, it can be a very uncomfortable place because you don't hide. There's no hiding when you present. It's like, here I am. And the fact that if you're doing something and it's not live and it's recorded, it's just you. It's just you talking to yourself, right? Knowing that others are going to hear it, but it's just you. So what people see when you present your information is a dialogue that you're having with your own heart, and it comes through so beautiful. I've loved your 3-minute videos, like trying to compete with TikTok here, and I love how
Oh,
short
the
and concise they
20,
are. The
what
21
was
day
it?
challenge.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't remember how many days. Yeah.
Well, the 777, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
right?
But
So I just I just love that you're doing what you're doing. And
there's going to be a point when it's going to pop. And what I'm actually doing right now is I knew it. I had the visions of Nabia, of that the prophet,
mhm,
prophetess essence energy.
mhm,
um like going back, people were starting to crowd around what I was doing. I was still doing a lot of water healing, anointing things, where it's like at the end there's bodies all over the ground, and people
mhm,
were pointing at me, and it was all pointing at Dale, Dale, Dale. And
yeah,
that's when I started pulling the plugs out of the wall. And
yeah.
people, just a few weeks ago, someone was like, why don't you do those anymore? And I'm like, I had to get away from that the point at Dale thing. I was like, because I felt like I was not failing. I thought people were missing the point. So it's like, now it's after being away from not doing tons of live events like that and doing a lot more one-on-one with people, I'm really able to focus in. And I tell them right from the first call, I'm like, I want you to walk on your own. I'm not a life
Exactly.
coach. I'm not going to give you a bunch of parameters that I give to
No.
everybody else for you to step into those footprints. All that stuff makes me want to throw up, excuse me. Just that whole standardization thing. What we're going to do is we're going to educare, we're going to draw out the essence of who you are, and I'm going to constantly pull you up. And for the first few weeks, you're not going to know what's happening. They'll be like, well, what exactly, like a
What are we
spouse will
doing
say, what have
here?
you been doing with Dale? I don't know exactly. And they'll text me, what have we been doing? And I'm like, you'll find out. And then like 3 weeks to a month in, they go, oh my God, wait a second. I walk in like outside, and all of a sudden it was like I was breathing deeper and I was seeing wider, and they didn't understand maybe in the beginning what was happening, but it's that drawing out that essence rather than me programming them with something. We've got enough programming. We don't
Oh,
need
dear
more.
Lord, yes, we do. We
So,
definitely don't need. Well, and that's the process, is we're going through assisting others to deprogram so that they can tap
absolutely.
into Ruka breathing, Ruka breath. You had said something to me, and I'm so grateful, because the different, like, again, I use the gem imagery because I see it as one gem, and I see it's like these beautiful cuts in it, and just a different angle sheds a different light, but it's the same thing. I had something that was so heartfelt that connected because of listening to one of your sharings regarding the Ruka, the kucha, and I know you've shared it many times. um I'm sure you have, because I haven't watched a ton of your videos. I just kept having people point and hear your name to people that I am really dear and close to, that I have a massive heart connect. um they would point in that direction, and so I listened, and about the ruka, about the perception of things, the unseen, and all of a sudden what I had been seeing for years. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry. I had been saying for years about the spirit breath, the inhale and the exhale. And and it was very linear. Okay. It was my
Mhm.
concept was very linear of it. And it was just like this one little turn on the gem. And all of a sudden the spirit breath and knowing that they didn't have a word for spirit, but begin to understand and understand what Ruka de Kucha was all about and the Ruach HaKodesh and what it was all about. And I went, oh my goodness, no wonder why the breathing methods are so profound, because you're increasing that breath, that living part of you, and it begins to open up this incredible part of you and making you open as an open channel, not a closed channel, but an open channel. And it was a massive dot connect for me, and it brought tears. And I penned something on Facebook because it radically shifted my linear perception into grasping the spiral nature of creation and this
Mm-hmm.
feminine energy that is coming together with the masculine in order to create something new within us through the breathing. And then I began to listen to the toning, and that when you would close with people and you would tone. And there was a lot that was there that I encouraged myself with through your words. And I was beginning to take these words and sing them myself, as I'm playing with these new concepts. And I have to thank you, because I stopped singing for many, many years. It was something that I did when I was in the Christian church. I was on the worship team, and I did a lot of singing in the spirit. Okay, I'm doing that,
Mm-hmm.
but through a spirit language, what other people call light language, and I would just sing, and these things would come through me, and it was something that was straight from here. And of course it didn't stay, because I had so many wounds that were there. um, I had multiple personalities that I didn't know. I was suffering through complex post-traumatic stress disorder that I didn't know. I wore really good masks and I faked it pretty well for most of my life until I started with the languages, and then I couldn't hide it anymore because it was too
Mm-hmm.
much light. But I stopped singing. I left the platform. I put my voice, I put it on the shelf. And when I began hearing you speak about toning, I've had a couple other people that have encouraged me this year that have been, I mean, I feel the ruka. I feel it drawing me to bring me back into that place, because it's such a pure language, and the tones and the frequencies are so full of love and light. And I've known that they have been meant to be sung, because that vibrational frequency goes forth and it ripples out, and it continues to ripple out in life, in creation, and becomes a new thing. And it's that feather touch that when somebody hears it, and I'm not talking about doing it where I want to get on a video and just start doing it. I'm not talking
Mm-hmm.
about that. When I say someone, I'm saying my avatar. When my egoic mind hears the pure sound and the pure tone of the language, and I began to sing it, if it's Hudutha, or if it's Tebutha, or if it's Amen, like you do in many of your videos, just these beautiful words and toning it, how much shifts. It's like the chaos that my ego mind wants to bring in, right? As soon as I do that, as soon as that comes out of my mouth, everything settles right here. And then I'm in that heart brain
It's
coherence.
so instantaneous in seconds, faster than meditation, breath work. There's no other technique, tool that a first time person can do that'll shift their awareness faster than toning. And we're talking seconds, just I feel completely different than I did before
Yeah,
that. And it
yeah.
opens up that, you dropped a word earlier and you're talking about, the prism and the diamond, and you dropped that word glory in the beginning, which teshbukta. And it's funny because teshbukta is the tesh root there, tish, literally means that something almost prismatic that a light goes into and refracts into lots of different directions. In the middle of the word teshbukta is shbuk, which is the word forgive, which means remove the root of suffering, to see clearly, to cancel, to leave. And then the ta at the end, gendering the word feminine, meaning that it's a state of being. So glory, tashbukta, is a state of being in which we are awake. We feel the expansiveness. It's the lens is completely clean, and life has this natural radiance, this natural shine that's refracting out in all directions. And that's what the word glory means. And it's like, whoo, it's so like it in the one line that may have been added to the Aramaic Lord's Prayer. Right there, it's what tashbukta, and it says the power and the glory. But it's amazing when you get to that place. I find like I not almost like it's like what I'm teaching. It comes from that, and it's almost like I'm pointing people toward that, not the words, not the books, not all that other stuff. And most of what I'm trying to teach, I can't explain. So it all makes a lot of sense that
Well,
way. So
it's because those concepts in the Aramaic language, they don't translate into English. And I comprehend that now because they need to be experienced. It's experiential knowledge that is ineffable. And so trying to say something in a diminished language that doesn't have that same vibrational frequency, that's where I encourage people who are drawn to this frequency to begin diving in themselves. And yes, is it daunting? Yeah, it is very daunting in the beginning. And literally like going back into kindergarten where you're making your flashcards and learning
yeah,
your alphabet gimels so that you
and
can
I've done that
translate.
too. I've done that with flashcards and
That's how I started.
yeah,
That's the
yeah. I
only way I could
remember like
start.
there's a great one of the Syriac websites had this great song. I love bacon melt. It was like a horrible song, but it made me remember. It made me remember and so it's like I find myself now, like decades later, like I wake up in the middle of the night and it's like in my head, and I'm like, no, go away. I know my alphabet. Leave me alone now. But it just gets in there. But it worked.
It
So
does, all these mnemonic devices, because as soon as you have them, this is what I've tried to explain to people too, because they'll see me dissect the words and they get excited, and then they try doing it in their self. I don't get the same interpretation. Well, of course you don't, because it's the living language. It's
yeah,
personal to
that's
where
the
you
point.
are at right now. So of course it's not going to be as I see it. I've been doing it for 10 years. We're not in the same level of consciousness. Extend grace to yourself. Please extend grace. Don't get
and
frustrated. It's
and
a
I can say
journey.
personally, like George Lambza, people look at his Bible and they go, "God, Dale, he's so low volume." I'm like, you got to understand that was written in 1930, came
Right.
out in the 50s. He worked on it through the
Right.
30s and the 40s, and people have to understand that he basically would have had his head cut off. They went after, they uh, killed the archdeacon of the Assyrian church in Los Angeles. They shot him dead in the front door of his house because he was trying to get more accurate translations out there into English, and they killed him. So
Yeah.
and not much investigation went into it. It just quietly went under the carpet and went away in the middle of the 70s. But it's like George did everything he could. He said he made 3,000 or so adjustments out of like 12 or 13,000 that he could have, because he knew people would throw the book out the window,
Of
and they
course.
threw it out the window anyway.
Anyway,
So,
right.
and I'm like, trust me, if he was here today, it would be so much more wide open.
Oh, it
And
would.
that's why it's
And
so important for me to keep my connection to Rocco Errico, who is his only student. And even though I
wow.
don't even see things the same as Rocco does, and I'm not
But it's
supposed
living.
to, I'm
No,
not
no, no.
supposed to.
I don't think so. This is the beauty I've seen in it. My phone keeps going off. I'm going to have to get up and shut it off. Um,
Well, I've only got to, I just got to get going too in a few minutes, but because
okay,
I've got another call at 11:30.
totally got it. I won't keep you much longer at all. So, what I have been trying to share with people since we started is that it is a living language, and it shows you at the level of where you are at in your consciousness and your awareness, where you are at in your heart. And so those who want to expedite the journey that are in that flashcard stage, it's like extend grace, extend that to yourself, because this journey is meant to be something experienced as a beautiful time of experiential knowledge, and it cannot be rushed, it cannot be hurried. It's like the process of a child in the womb. There's a certain measure of this incubation period that must be
Absolutely.
had. And if it comes out early, then there's a lot of complications that have to be dealt with. And then when you try to force it, it's like, well, but Carrie, I want to see the way you see. And I'm like, well, have you put in 10 years? Because it's a time in. It's a time in the effort. How much time have you put into investing in yourself? Have you spent, it's pointing fingers back at me, Carrie, have you spent 48 years investing in yourself? No. I've only really invested in the last decade. So what did I do for the previous 38 years? So the wisdom that comes in being able to see the way you see through the languages is based on the accumulative effort of the journey of the discovery of you, because it is a mirror of you. What you are seeing reflecting back to you is right where you are in your moment. This is why I couldn't hide any longer my multiple personalities and my CPTSD, because it was a mirror and it was shooting it right back at me. It was this
Mm.
prophet that was speaking to me saying, "Girl, you got work to do. You are a hot mess right now." And my avatar, my body just started freaking out because there was so much light. It couldn't hide anymore. All of those fractured egos could not hide any longer. And it had to bubble up so that those mirrors of those individuated egos could no longer be and exist in order for me to speak. What I believe is when I get into that place of the flow of Meltha, there was no way. There was too many faces. It was too noisy. And there was just no way it could be done. So at some point, I would love to, if you're up for it, to have another conversation with you. I know that you're busy, but I really want to,
Definitely.
I want to dive into the Magdalene. I really want to touch that aspect of it because there was a memory that
You're not
I
supposed to
tapped
talk about
into.
her. She was supposed to be under the carpet
I know, right?
and off the
Well,
stage. Push her
I
off the
know.
stage. That's
Well,
what it was all about.
it's time. It is truly time
Very
to
much
honor
time.
that energy. And there was a memory I tapped, and I understand now why I was able to tap an energy memory of 2000 years ago. And there was some things that were coming and I was really confused with it because I was not Mary of Magdala. I was not her in this aeon. I was not, but I was given permission to tap some of those memories. And it undid me in order to redo me.
Hmm.
And I really want to bring that to attention. So if you would be willing to make another time where we can discuss this, I would love for your heart to
Definitely.
just pour out with that, because I want people that are on our YouTube channel, our little small YouTube channel, to be able to hear this, to connect, especially in the connection to the sacred languages and what is going on and why she
Hmm.
this energy is coming forward to us to embrace right now because of the call that's going forward, because it truly is time.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but 31 years ago, my wife will kind of talk about how 25, 30 years ago, I'd do an event about Magdalene and two people would show up. And of course, they were always women. And then it was like in the last few years, you could see all of a sudden all these lilies in the field beginning to rise up. And it's really amazing. I was part of the Magdalene Mastery Summit this past summer, and it was wild because everybody's doing something, their own unique perspective. And what I focused on, funny enough, was not necessarily just toning, but really my focus was on coming back prior to our thoughts, tapping into that essence of the Magdalita and staying on the level of feeling without needing to enunciate it into thoughts and words
Mm,
where we have to write like a novel, although novels are great, fiction is great, but I find less value in words on the page. I find more value in sharing with people how to get in that space and stay there, male and female, and to be able to express from that. And it's funny because I tell people there's no such thing as the second coming until the masculine and the feminine are exactly 50-50. And they're not even really 50-50 because they're not separate. We're talking about a singularity, one singular continuum. And until people start to realize that, and that's interesting too, because you see this whole Roe v. Wade thing happening. People
mhm.
screaming about how you can't tell me, and I'm not on either side of this fence. You can't tell me I have to get a vaccine, but I am going to tell you, what you can do with your body as a woman. I find that very interesting, but all this stuff needs to come up. It
It
needs to
does.
come up. It needs to come out into the light,
It does.
and it's very it's like literally would almost be impossible for me at this point not to start speaking more apocalyptically, if that's a word,
Hmm.
but not in the sense that other people are. I want to tell people, look, we are the suffering is happening, but yes, we're in a movie, but that doesn't, discount the suffering we're going through and the pain and helping to alleviate the suffering of others. But all that being said, we're all just fine because our eternal natures are completely untouched. And when we get on the other side, when we get out of the movie theater, you're going to realize that you were really going through this, thrown down into a swimming pool, almost like physical rehab, where you have to deal with the grossness of matter, with the resistance, so that
Yep.
you think a thought and it doesn't instantaneously manifest,
Right.
but time and space, that continuum and all those gravity forces
Yep.
slow it down, so
Yes.
that you almost wonder, I don't understand what's the creative process because it's so slowed down, but
It's like
that's the learning
cold
process.
molasses, man. It's cold molasses.
Yeah. So, I mean, try moving in that. You're not going to move too much. So the idea is, to move consciously enough where it's going to take a while to warm that up around you and to be
Yes,
able to have the strength in that resistance to be able to at some point get out of the pool. But you're
exactly.
there for a purpose. And I shy away from platitudes like everything happens for a reason. It's like, well, yeah, maybe on some level, but that to me is like a way of not dealing with what's there in front of you. It's like,
I
let's
agree.
like, I think it's more important that we figure out how to be as fluid as we can within this rather than yakking about platitudes and things. So,
I agree.
um,
I totally
so
agree with
anyway,
that.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time today greatly. It did my heart incredibly well to be able to connect with you today face to face. And I know that I would love to have people go visit your website. It's pretty easy. It's your name. It's daleallenhoffman.com
Yeah. And
and
if
be
they
able
don't
to.
know that, if they just go to Google and write Dale Aramaic, it'll come up.
Oh,
So,
sure.
yeah.
Absolutely, for searches. So, for those of you who want to connect with Dale and listen to his work, his YouTube channel, please go over and view him, like him, subscribe to him. I know he's not looking for viewers, but I really believe that it's
Well, I'm
time
not
for this
necessarily pushing them
message.
away, but I'm not.
No,
Yeah, I
but
know. Yeah,
but but this
totally.
message needs to be heard, and us of the same gem through different fractals are going to reach the audiences that need to hear the message. Not that we're looking for it to boost our ego, but I know that it is time for this to get out there, and that's why I'm talking to Steve Conover and having him come on, and Daryl Shelton, I'm having him come on because
Daryl's
these are
awesome.
these
Steve's awesome.
voices.
All the names that are coming up are amazing people. So,
They are my bestest friends. They are right here, and my heart soars when I talk to them. And when I'm away from them, I still feel them, and that's where I'm feeling that connection with you as well. And what is it? What is binding us? What is bringing us together? The language. It's the language. So with that, Amen. Namaste.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
I look forward to it again.